Hi, I'm Geoff Ebert, Senior Solicitor and founder of Your Super Split. Today is the second in a series of talks about superannuation and dividing it as part of your property settlement. Today's topics are, firstly, in relation to super, can super be divided, firstly, between parties? And secondly, what is that process to do so? So, up until 2002, if you had a party had superannuation, they weren't able to give it to the other party in part or in whole. So the other assets had to be divided to try and square the books, so to speak, or in fact the orders would have to be delayed until one party reached retirement age. This was very unwieldy, so the government, in its wisdom, decided to change the legislation to allow parties to divide or split superannuation, as it's sometimes called. So what that means is this: if, for example, in a husband and wife situation, the husband has $200,000 in, let's say, an OST-safe superannuation, and to divide the superannuation between them, he decides to give his wife $100,000, then an order can be made that requires the super fund to transfer $100,000 of that super to a super fund of the wife, so that that can then be balanced out between the two parties. So how do we go about that? So if parties can reach agreement about how they're going to divide their super as well as the rest of their assets, what is actually undertaken? There are two ways to divide superannuation. One of them is called a consent order, which is filed with the court and then given to the super fund. And the other one is called a binding financial agreement, which is essentially a written agreement between the parties. Now, which one would you use? In our experience, we've found that using a binding financial agreement requires two sets of solicitors to look at the paperwork and is generally more expensive to prepare than a set of consent orders, which is given to the court, where both parties can get legal advice, but they're not compelled to do so. So at Your Super Split, we prepare consent orders, which are then checked by the court and then sealed, which is a stamp put on it saying that is a final and binding agreement. And then after that, the super fund is served with a copy of those orders, and it will divide the superannuation accordingly. So that's the middle part of the process of superannuation division, and I look forward to discussing further with you in the coming weeks what happens during that process and afterwards.